So as you can see here, I prepared this document. I usually set these up where the first row is more of an initial investigation, like what you might see, what you might experiment with. And then I do an intermediate and then an advance on the third row. This is basically what the structure might look like. Here's the pivot point, and this is sort of expressing where the point of emphasis or tension would be in this type of layout. Now you'll notice that there are concentric circles. There's like a circle within a circle within a circle. I basically created 8 circles, I believe, in this system because that's approximately how many lines of text I was working with in our example in the past. In this particular case, I didn't want all of the circles to be symmetrical, meaning that they're perfectly aligned with one another. So I did create some sort of distortion on the bottom right corner of this system, and everything sort of grows from this bottom right corner and it starts to get wider. It's a little bit tight in this spot. I basically took the system, copied and pasted it, and then started cutting it up, breaking these circles into different chunks or different pieces that I thought was visually interesting. So I didn't want the text sort of going all the way around the circle. I thought it might be interesting where it's only using a portion of the circle. I basically cut them in almost equal ratios, but I was trying to create a little bit of overlap and nesting within one another. You'll notice that in this particular case, I set, at least in a wireframe form and sort of this very primitive form, the circles in a similar structure. So they have a similar value and similar weight. Now, I haven't placed the text in. This is just sort of a placeholder of how the hierarchy might optically look at this particular scale, at this particular weight, and at this particular value. So here's the structure once again, but broken up into separate pieces, trying to make it more visually interesting, and also starting to establish a weight system. And you'll notice that I removed the pivot just because I knew the tension was there. And I wanted to see how will this look if I remove the tension. And let me zoom out a little bit so that way you can see that it's on an 8.5 by 11 document. And I'm sort of weighing this in the bottom right corner of the composition. This can obviously sit wherever you like, but this is where I chose to place mine. Here, it's the same structure, except now I'm playing with value, trying to establish the hierarchy. And you'll notice that the outer circle, because it's darker, is the most emphasized. The outer circle, the one on the right, is the lightest one, so that has the least amount of hierarchy. And this is sort of sitting in the middle. I took the system and now I'm playing with scales. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking this is going to be a bold text. It's going to be black. It might be a larger scale. So that's what these bars are representing. It's representing what the text might look like. So I went from these basic blue circles and I'm trying to develop them to have more hierarchy, more control. I'm trying to guide the viewer through the system, so on and so forth. And this, I wanted to group it. I wanted to keep it in groups. So that's why they're sort of set up in pairs. I didn't have to do this, but this is just sort of the logic that I assigned to how I was setting up my dilation system. And that needs to be sort of emphasized. This is just me experimenting, right? You might pursue this in a completely different way. When you look at the book, the author basically presents numerous examples of similar structures that different students had created to give you a suggestion of where these solutions might go. And they're there to provide some sort of inspiration for what you might be able to develop on your own. These are experiments. There isn't necessarily a right or a wrong. We're trying to get this to evolve and to become something visually interesting beyond just setting text in this conventional way. So we're basically playing sort of like Weingart when we experiment with these systems.